Sinai. They would then stay at Mount Sinai for about a year. Here they would receive the law, build a tabernacle, and be taught to obey God's laws and principles.
Now it appears that after crossing the Red Sea, that shortly thereafter, Moses' wife and children went to be with Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. Then later, after Moses arrived at Mount Sinai, his wife and family rejoined him. Now where would Moses' father-in-law have lived in this area? Well, just east of Mount Sinai is the town of Al-Bad. Located in this town are two incredible pieces of evidence that links Moses to this area and that it was indeed the land of Midian. First, the name of a historical and archaeological site in this area is called Madian. This is the same word as Midian. It's the Aramaic word for Midian. At this site are what are known as the Caves of Jethro. Inside these caves are ancient tombs, rooms, and interesting findings. This site has been preserved by the Saudi government and has a long tradition of being known as Midian and the location of the tribe of Jethro. The second piece of evidence is a close-by well that is called the Well of Moses. The Saudis have long believed that this is the well where Moses met the daughters of Jethro, and Muslims from around the world come to see it. The Saudi locals are excited to point out that this is the well of Moses, and it is also an archaeological site that has been preserved by the Saudi government. All this evidence points out that Jethro once lived here, that it was the place where Moses lived while in Midian, and that the well here is where he met the daughters of Jethro and protected them and Jethro's sheep from other tribesmen. This area is close by to Mount Sinai and would fit the biblical account of how Moses took Jethro's sheep to graze in higher pastures there, as it's only about 25 miles or 40 kilometers due east. It was quite common for shepherds to take their flocks to higher ground in the summer months to find rich pasture lands at higher elevations. It also would have only been a 2-day journey from where Jethro and Moses lived to Mount Sinai. All this is convincing evidence that Mount Sinai is close by to Al-Bad and this area, and that it was indeed the land of Midian where Moses lived and got married after fleeing from Egypt. Now the amount of evidence around Mount Sinai here, which today is called Jabal Machlah, reveals this place is indeed the true Mount Sinai. It is all quite convincing, so let's now look at all of the evidence here at this Mount Sinai, which is known again as Jabal Machlah. First of all, the Bible states that the Israelites camped at the base of Mount Sinai for around a year. Interestingly, at the base of this mountain here is a large flat area where the Israelites could have camped. It is huge in size and had streams of water and pasture land for their livestock to graze. Also, the climate was perfect as it is higher in elevation, so it's not hot in the summer and it's comfortable in the winter. Next, Exodus 19:18 states that Mount Sinai was all in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked violently. The top of these mountains are dark, showing signs of burnt marks. The outer parts of the rocks are black, but on the inside they are brownish in color. And you can see here there's been some rocks that have been chipped away, and you can see that on the outside they're black and on the inside they are brown. This seems to be more evidence that this mountain and the surrounding mountains close by were covered with fire and smoke. Now from Mount Sinai, God gave the 10 Commandments to the nation of Israel and supernaturally wrote them on tablets of stone with His own finger. This was an earth-shattering event. Scripture says the mountain was on fire for 6 days and appeared as if it was going to be consumed. And the Israelites who saw this were terrified as they beheld everything that took place. The Bible also speaks about how Moses and 70 elders of Israel went up the mountain to worship God. The elders were to stay at a distance from Moses and could only go part way up. Interestingly, there is a natural plateau part way up the mountain where this event could have happened. Another piece of strong evidence is that at the base of this mountain an altar has been discovered. This would match what Scripture states in Exodus 24, 4 and 5. And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. Then he got up early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 memorial stones for the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men of the tribes of Israel, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed bulls as peace offerings to the Lord. Now at the very base of this mountain are extensive remains of an altar and a complete system for animal sacrifice. There are corrals where the animals would have been kept and an altar at the front of it. There have also been discovered animal bones here underground. Scripture also refers to 12 memorial stones or pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. Interestingly, there are stones by this altar that perfectly match the biblical record. The Saudi locals say that in the past, these stones were much more evident and could be seen much more clearer, and that the platform was more intact as well. Also, Ron Wyatt documents having found one of the pillars that had Hebrew writings on it. It's quite fascinating that everything here matches perfectly the biblical account of this event. Near the altar of Moses and the 12 pillars, Moses read to the Israelites the book of the covenant, and they agreed to it. This means that Moses probably had a spot right above the altar that served as a stage to address the Israelites. Now, just above the altar of Moses is a large platform from where Moses could have easily spoken to the Israelites when the covenant was made. It provides a natural place from which to speak, and the Saudi locals talk about how sound travels here like a natural amphitheater. Another fascinating discovery at the base of this mountain is the altar upon which Aaron set the golden calf, and all Israel worshipped before it. On the top of these rocks is the main rock that shows a flat spot where the golden calf might have been placed for all Israel to see. Below the rocks is where Aaron would have made an altar to this golden calf. Now Exodus 32 provides all the details. It says, "Now when the people saw that Moses delayed in coming down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, 'Come, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him.' Aaron said to them, 'Tear off the gold rings which are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me.' Then all the people tore off the gold rings which were on their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he took this from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made it into a golden calf, or a molten calf. And they said, 'This is your God, O Israel, who brought you up from the land of Egypt.' Now when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it." So Moses was on top of Mount Sinai for 40 days, and this event happened while Moses was away. Now, interestingly, this golden calf was a representation of the Egyptian false god Hathor. It was one of Egypt's main gods. You can see images of this false god that look very similar to the paintings on these rocks here. There are also many other inscriptions on these rocks as well. Now, worship of this false god Hathor consisted of dancing, drums, and sexual promiscuity, and this is exactly what the Israelites were doing while Moses was away. This altar, interestingly, is fenced and gated like other archaeological sites at the base of this mountain by the Saudi government. However, over the past several years, the Saudi government has opened up these sites to tourists, and you can now go there easily and see these places for